Hello, it's Bailey and welcome back to my channel. Today I am bringing you my January wrap up, and I kind of popped off in January. I read 19 books. So before I get into all of that, I do want to start or begin starting with the books I acquired throughout the month. I also am going to start sharing how much I spent on books. I do think that kind of keeps me accountable, and then I would also like to speak that I would like to end up spending less than $1,000 on books altogether this year. I know that might seem like a lot of money to some people, that might seem like nothing. I think that I purchase a moderate amount of books, so I think that I'm not somebody who like spends the most, but I definitely could spend less. Obviously you can be a reader and completely read for free, but yeah, that's what I'm going for this year. So in the month of January, overall, I spent $110 on books, and I guess I'm gonna share them with you in terms of what I spent the most money on versus the least money on. So there is one book I probably shouldn't have bought because I did buy it just like I hadn't left the house yet on maternity leave. I went to Target for the first time and was just like, I'm buying a book, and the book I picked up was 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. And the only reason I say I probably shouldn't have bought this is because, like I said, this is the most expensive book I bought this month, and this book cost me $20.22. So that's the first thing I bought. The next most expensive book I bought was The Stranger Beside Me by Anne Rule. I ordered this off of Amazon and it cost me $17.05, but I did end up reading this month also, so I don't really have regrets buying this one. You'll see this might be pretty high on my favorites of the month, and also I did start tabbing it, but I want to go back and like highlight instead of tab because I obviously dropped off at some point because I was running out of tabs. Then at $16.04 was my book of the month box, and actually I don't have the book that I got this month, but I got Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins, and I already read that one as well, but my stepmom is now borrowing it. Then I did something really dumb probably, but I joined like one of those Facebook like buy sell trade book groups, and so I bought 3 books from that group this month, and each of them cost me $10. So the first one I got was The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I also picked up The Hawthorne Legacy by Jennifer Lynn Barnes, and I got Two Girls Down by Louisa Luna. So those are all the physical books I bought, but also included in that $110 is my Scribd account, which cost me $10.69. And then also I do still have an Audible subscription. I'm trying to use up my credits so I can cancel my subscription, but that cost me 16 bucks, which just seems like ridiculous. I would definitely like to get away from that, but you can't cancel and keep your credits, so I'm trying to use up my credits. All right, sorry if the angle changed a little bit. Mabel just got down for her nap, so she was just like fussing a little bit, so I went to like soothe her for a minute. But now I want to get into my stats for the month of January. If I'm looking down, I'm looking at my phone or my planner to recite these stats to you. So firstly, like I said, I read 19 books, which was 86 hours and was also 5,646 pages, which translates to 65.7 pages an hour as my average reading speed. And I read 10 hours of audiobooks. One of these increments of audiobooks was a DNF, so it should have been a longer audiobook, but I listened to 5 hours worth of it, and then the other one was a 5-hour audiobook. Also, here's a little graph of just like how this computes to my like averages for the year, and then compared to 2021 as well. So each of these lines are January, and then 2022 as a whole, and then compared to 2021. January and 2022 as a whole will be the same on each of the graphs because it was only the first month. I've been transitioning more to ebooks this month because I'm able to read on my phone like when I get up in the middle of the night with the baby, and just like while I'm holding her, it's much easier to read on my phone. So I've been picking up books I own via ebook, either through Scribd or through my library. So some of the like ebooks I'm reading are actually still books I own, but I read 11 physical books, 5 ebooks, and 3 audiobooks. I owned 14 of the books that I read this month, and of the 5 that I didn't own, 1 was from Scribd, 3 were audiobooks, and 1 was actually an ARC. I am trying to read 75% books I own this year, and so this month I did not quite make it. 73.6% of the books that I read in January were books I owned. So I was really close. If I would have read one more thing that I owned, I would have been there, but in February I'll have to do a little bit better to kind of skew that stat for the year. Of these 19 things I read, 11 of them were adult, 5 were YA, 2 were middle grade, and I read 1 new adult, and I read about 32% authors of color. For the year these books were published, I had 2 of them were 2022 releases. 7 of them were either 2020 or 2021. 8 were published from 2010 to 2019, and 2 were published before 2010. I did say I was gonna try to get back into fantasy this year, and actually in January, my most read genre was fantasy. I had 5 fantasy books, 4 romance books, 4 thrillers, 2 horrors, 2 nonfiction, a classic, and a contemporary. And my star rating breakdown, I had 1 DNF. I didn't have any 1 stars. I had 3 2 stars, 5 3 stars, 8 4 stars, and 2 5 stars, which made my average rating for the month 3.77, which is higher than my average, like what usually is my average rating. So pretty good month. With all of that being said, I am going to get into the actual books that I read this month. With reading so many, I did decide I'm not going to talk much about any of the books that I like from DNF to 1 star to 3 star. I'm not going to really talk about them much. I'm only basically going to talk about my 4 and 5 star books. The other ones I'm just going to list for you. So the book I DNF'd was The Book of Accidents by Chuck Wendig. This is also like the audiobook that I ended up putting down. Then my 2-star books were A Flicker in the Dark by Stacey Willingham, The Dating Playbook by Farah Rochan, and Where the Red Fern Grows by Wilson Rowles. My 3-star books were Confess by Colleen Hoover. This was a reread. If the Shoe Fits by Julie Murphy. We Need to Do Something by Max Booth the second. Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo, as well as Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo. So getting into my 4-star books, my first 4-star was Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins. Like I said, my stepmom is borrowing this. I do own it, but here's what it looks like. And this has been getting pretty mixed reviews, but overall I did end up enjoying it. It is an isolated thriller, which I don't read very many isolated thrillers that are not like the snowy winter setting. So I really enjoyed that this one was actually like a deserted island type setting. It's not like the best thriller ever, but overall I had a really good time reading that one. Next was probably my most surprising book of the month, and it was These Violent Delights by Chloe Gong. This was recommended to me by Ashley from Ashley's Reads, or Of Fiction and Fantasy, and like I said, this one really took me by surprise. I wasn't expecting to like this one at all. I thought it was probably going to be a 2 stars, but it did get a 4-star from me, and I do plan on continuing and reading the sequel. This is a Romeo and Juliet retelling, kind of. I think I wish it wasn't pitched as that, even though it is technically that, because I think that kind of is what turned me off a little bit. It's a Romeo and Juliet retelling set in the 1920s with like rival crime families, gangs, and it was really good. Then I have We Have Always Been Here by Samra Habib. This is a nonfiction memoir about a Pakistani girl who immigrates from Pakistan to Canada, and just her like experience immigrating, and then also her experience discovering that she is queer. And this one was recommended to me by Nicoletta from Read by Night. Then I have the arc I read, which was The Donut Trap by Julie Tu. This is already out. I didn't read it in time, but this one actually was a pretty big surprise to me as well. I thought this one was really fun, like lighthearted, like really just a good rom-com, and I loved just our main character's growth with her communication with her family, and the romance overall was also really cute, and the like donut shop setting wasn't as cheesy as I thought it could have been. I thought it was really well done. Definitely would recommend that one. Then I have Confessions by Kane Monato. This is a pretty short, I think I classified this as a novella on like my spreadsheets. Pretty short book. It is cut into just like a few chapters that are each told from a different perspective, and you find out in the first chapter, in the first perspective, that this little girl died, and basically this teacher it was her daughter, and the opening chapter is her accusing 2 of her students of basically being responsible for the death. So you get her perspective doing that, and then like you switch perspectives to other people in the school throughout and that are like involved in this thing that happened, and this one was really, really good. If you're looking for something like fast and suspenseful and a little bit different, I definitely would recommend this one, and this is also translated work. Then I have something very fun and lighthearted, and that was Tilly and the Book Wanderers by Anna James. I'm trying to get into middle grade, so this was kind of like my first try, but this was definitely a very fun one. I said the only thing that didn't really work for me in this, or it did work for me, but that could have enhanced my experience, is if I would have known the original stories that this book was centered around. This one centered around Alice in Wonderland and Anne from Anne of Green Gables, and basically our main character starts being able to interact with her favorite book characters, and those are the characters that are her favorite. And this was just very fun, whimsical. I'm excited to continue the series, and I think this was a good choice for me to like start middle grade with. Next, I have Six Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. This was the Shelf This Book Club pick for January, and it was picked by Ashley from Of Fiction and Fantasy. And I would say this one was also a surprising read for me. I ended up really loving it. I still find this one hard to explain because it sounds kind of silly when you explain it, but actually reading it, it's very good. So I don't want to like turn anyone away from this by describing it not very well, but this is about our main character who basically gets like a curse to hide that she has magic, and so she has a bowl on her head so nobody recognizes her, and her 6 brothers get turned into cranes. So the whole story is her basically trying to get her brothers turned back from cranes and like undo this curse. And like I said, it's better than I can describe it as. And then for my last 4-star, I have Behind Closed Doors by B.A. Paris. I ended up really enjoying this one. I know this one gets like a lot of flack for people enjoying it, but I'm willing to admit I was basic. I really enjoyed this one. It's a fun, twisty domestic thriller. Our main character basically is in an abusive relationship, and her husband like locks her in the house every day, and she can't go anywhere, she can't do anything, but he also like takes her to dinner parties. And so it's interesting to see like her interactions when she's allowed out, and just how controlling her husband is. And you are throughout the story like working towards something that, like a looming really bad situation that our main character is trying to avoid. So on to my 2 5-star books, the first of which being Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. This was recommended to me from Martine, from Just Martine, and I'm so glad she recommended it. I did already know that I love Alice Oseman, but this one might be my favorite. I might love this one a little bit more than I loved Loveless. I guess I wouldn't put this over Heartstopper, but I like this one a little bit more than I liked Loveless. Alice Oseman really just writes teenagers so well, and I loved the friendship aspect of this. Our main character has felt like she's never had like true friends, and then throughout this she makes a friend basically, but it also has like a podcast element and just like internet jargon in it, and it kind of follows the premise of like such a studious person realizing that there's more to life than your studies, and that like living your life is important, and going out and doing more things than that is important and worth it, and you should do it, and to just like follow your heart and do what you want. So this one I really love. And next, my favorite book of the month, which is one that I purchased and I said I didn't regret spending so much money on it because it was worth it, and that is The Stranger Beside Me by Anne Rule. This was definitely my favorite book of the month. I'm willing to say that this will probably end up in my favorite books of the year. I have loved Anne Rule's writing previously, and this is her most well-known work because this is a true crime book following Ted Bundy, and so Anne Rule writes true crime, but Anne Rule also actually knew Ted Bundy in real life. So it's like a very personal true crime story from like a true crime writer who knew the serial killer. It was very well done. It is a chunky book. I would say it's worth it. She definitely puts in like a lot more of like her life into this one than her other books because she was involved. I will say I do think that she thought she was a little bit more important than she was. Like she really wrote herself into this. And if you watch anything else or read anything else from other people's perspective on this case, Anne Rule was not as prevalent as she writes herself to be. But I also do think like she was involved with him. She did write with him even when he was in jail. So I thought this was really good, and there was a lot of detail here, and at no point did I think this was boring. I think that like the over 500 pages were worth it and needed. I didn't think it was like too long by any means. If you're interested in true crime at all, I would recommend this one. It's probably the best true crime book I've ever read. That was my month of January. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was kind of long, but I read so many things in January. I'm not planning on reading that many things in February. I do go back to work this month, so we'll see how it ends up. But thank you so much for spending some time with me today, and I will see you again very soon. Bye!